Welcome to the Next Class 2.0 with host Rob Birdsell, Kent Hickey, and Aaron Barisano. Join us as we discuss the latest trends and innovations shaping education.
Hello and welcome to the Next Class. I'm Rob Birdsell, one of your hosts, joined by my colleague Kent. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Rob.
And our viewers, which we have some that go to our YouTube channel, will notice that Kent is very dressed up today. So our guests should feel honored that he has a sport coat on. It's the first time we've seen him.
Rob, we have Kristen Oates with us. I'm dressing up. This is a big deal, okay?
And we'd like to welcome our guest, Kristen Oates, the co-host of a very wonderful podcast, Turning to the Mystics. So Kristen, welcome to the Next Class.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
This is, as I said earlier, Kent and I have listened to all 13 seasons of your podcast, and it's wild to hear your voice and see you in person. So it's pretty fun. And to our listeners, highly recommend Turning to the Mystics. It is a fantastic podcast. Before we get into that, Kristen, let's just chat a little bit about your background. You come to this world of mysticism from a very different place. Looks like you began your career at Bridgespan.
Yes, yeah. I'm from Australia. So I grew up in Australia, and I actually started with a law degree and an economics degree and went into management consulting. So very career focused at the beginning, and worked for a number of years for Bain and Company. And then I had the wonderful opportunity to come over to the States and work for the Bridgespan Group, which is a spin-off from Bain and Company focused on nonprofit consulting. And I got to work with them for a full year in San Francisco, working on nonprofit clients, which was wonderful. And I met my husband while I was there on the steps of a church.
Wow. That's amazing. In a small world connection, the San Francisco office of Bridgespan led Kristen Ray's strategic plan in 2008, which is a really small world.
Yeah, they do wonderful work. Really, really clever people in that organization. It was a gift to work there. Yeah, so I went back to Australia for a year and dated my husband long distance, kind of discerning if I was called to move my whole life over to America. And in the end, it was a no-brainer. And and I moved here to get married, back in 2006.
And then I mean, that background is pretty amazing. By the way, Kent is a recovering lawyer also.
Yeah.
And so how do you go from management consulting to the world of contemplative leadership?
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to my childhood. I had my grandmother was just an amazing person in my life, and very spiritual but not religious. And now I have the tools and the understanding. I probably would say she had very many mystical experiences. At the time, we didn't really understand what was happening, but she kind of planted spiritual seeds in me. And the biggest thing she taught me was, no matter what happened in her life, she really approached it as a teaching and something to learn, whether it was good or bad. She didn't judge things that way, but looked at everything as an opportunity to learn and grow. And so that's the biggest thing I really took away from that. And I searched for years in psychology, and wellness, and then in spirituality to find my teacher. And I was lucky enough to find Richard Rohr, the Center for Action and Contemplation, and I joined their living school back in 2014, working with, learning from Richard Rohr, James Finley, Cynthia Bourgeot. And then it was through my contact with the living school that I kind of applied to support the managing director, Michael Poffenberger, and Richard Rohr to do a strategic plan for the CAC.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I started with them, helping them build a strategic plan, and then I went into their executive leadership team.
And what year was that you did the plan?
That was in 2015, early 2016. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I wonder if it did. Turning to the Mystics, did that grow out of that strategic plan? Because that predates
Yes.
that.
Yeah, no, it definitely grew out of that. We recorded our first season in 2019, launched in 2020. And part of my role, what I was tasked with, was to expand the teaching pool at the CAC,
Okay.
and bring the living school teachers and other teachers into more and more of CAC's programs, because they were largely built around Richard.
Mm-hmm.
So I was helping grow the teaching pool, and then also trying to figure out what's the best way to deliver the unique gifts of this teacher. And so when I was contemplating what to do with Jim, one, he really wanted to be able to work from home, and so podcasts seemed like a really great avenue for him. So when I was researching the market, I came across a podcast by Tara Brach, and she's a Buddhist teacher. And the podcast was just her giving a Dharma talk and then leading a meditative practice. And I thought, wow, I could really see Jim kind of in this kind of a setting, but leading Lectio Divina with the text of a mystic. Because what's amazing about Jim, he's so steeped in these Christian mystics. So he knows their text so well and so beautifully, but he can really bring out the depth of the text and make it relevant to daily life. So that was the big idea, that it would be like a Lectio Divina practice. And fortunately, we just hired an amazing podcast producer, Corey Wayne, and he was able to bring that idea to life. And my role evolved over time. At first, I was just playing a very minor role, but from season 2 onwards, we decided to insert me as representative of audience members. And so Jim would do a solo Lectio practice in one session. And then in the next session, I'd bring to him like what I think listeners would be asking and curious about, and that we'd dialogue about that. That's extended into coaching sessions, where at the end of each season, we try and make that mystic applicable for people who want to take that mystic forward as their teacher. And then we have guests come on as well.
I'm sorry, Rod, I just want to follow up on that last point. Maybe ask about James Finley too, because a number of people listening to this may know about him, but others do not. But I just want to say that there was a clear shift after season 1 where you became more active as a conversational partner and speaking as a listener. Super helpful, because I'll listen to some James Finley stuff and I'm like, not that sometimes I'm not really grasping the depth, but like sometimes I don't even understand the words. Like I don't even know what the words mean. So I kind of wait for the dialogue, and Kirsten will ask, okay, this guy. So that dialogue's been great. But before we turn it back over to Rob, can you just share a little bit about James Finley? Because what a background. Unbelievable. The Merton thing just blows you away.
Yes. And he just released his memoir a couple of years ago called The Healing Path. I highly recommend it. And it's really the story of his life. James Finley is a mystic. He's a living mystic. And for people who are looking for this mystical path, I remember when we launched the podcast and thinking, all the people out there looking for this mystical path, they won't even believe this podcast. I'm getting tears in my eyes, because I know my grandmother would have loved a teacher like this. She didn't have trustworthy guidance. She didn't have teachers who understood this path. So to get this out into the world is such a gift. But Jim Finley started off as a monk as a Trappist monk in the Abbey of Gethsemane, and Thomas Merton was his mentor for 6 years. And so he had Thomas Merton had a big influence on Jim, and really invited him into the Christian mystics, the texts of the Christian mystics. He left Gethsemane and became a clinical psychologist. And so he has these deep spiritual gifts and these deep psychological gifts as well. And so he really brings the two together in a profound way. Yes, and he's been a part of the CAC, since the Living School began about 2014.
When you guys launched that in the pandemic, and I
Yeah.
remember walking often because there was nothing else to do, and listening to you two. It's such a weird dynamic time, and then to be going back to these mystics. You launched with Thomas Merton, and that was kind of in the thick of the pandemic. And just interesting time for you guys to launch and to carry it forward. I have vivid memories of walking right outside this window for you go 45, 50 minutes and just the other thing that he's introduced that I found interesting is the sit,
Hmm.
which is relatively new in the past couple seasons, which I think is a beautiful way to end. So I time it so that I get home and go do the sit in a chair. So do the walk and just a beautiful experience. So thank you and Jim for what you guys have done. I can't imagine the number of people that you have impacted. It's just an
Hmm.
amazing podcast. But
Hmm.
let's now turn uh, to today and in this conversation, and would love your thoughts on what mystics would say to people kind of today in the trenches, and especially for teachers. What would
Hmm.
and school leaders, what would mystics sort of say and share with a school leader, a school teacher today?
Yes, yes. And I put a bit of thought into this. Um, we didn't quite finish my resume, but a few years ago, I left the CAC executive team and launched myself as a contemplative leadership coach. So
Hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about how to support leaders, and I put some thought into what to share with you today. I want to start by saying I just really admire teachers. My sister's a school teacher, and I had the gift of being able to go and visit her classroom in Australia a few times, and was just so amazed with what teachers, do every single day for hours a day, managing little personalities and creating engaging education. So just want to say I really admire teachers. Um, so I'm thinking about the Christian mystics and what they might want to share with a teacher. And what I know about the mystics, and like James Finley, they're very personal. They really see you.
Hmm.
And so I think a mystic would want to sit down one on one with each teacher and really get
Hmm.
to see them and listen to their questions and ask, hear their stories
Hmm.
specifically. Um, there's a beautiful Christian mystic, Julian of Norwich, and she lived late 1300s, early 1400s in England. And she used to have, she lived next to a church in what was called an anchorage, and she'd have an open window to the street, and people would come to her for chats, and I'm sure they would share what was going on in their lives with her. So I'm thinking of someone coming to the window of Julian. And here's some things I think she'd want them to know. So, firstly, you have a value beyond measure. Your very being is precious, not because of what you do, but because you're eternally sacred. Every breath emanates from and exists in God. Your whole life exists in God, in God's infinite love. It's so touching that you would commit your life to helping children and teens, equipping them um, to be able to survive well in this world. And it's so touching to know that about you. But it's not just touching, because this is your path and this is where God meets you in your life. And so God wants to show you how much you're loved and to help ground you in that love so that you might be able to share that with others. And your teaching is part of how God meets you and shapes you and teaches you. I'd want to ask a teacher, can you remember a moment when your teaching brought you into the truth of love? Maybe a time when you saw the true value of a student, or you saw the true value of what you are giving to your students. Maybe there are times when you've wondered who's teaching who, when God's presence shines out of the sincerity of the student in their question, in their curiosity, in the way they look at you. And I'd want a teacher to know that when they make mistakes or fall short of being their best, and they will, because we're all human and we do that, there's no disappointment in God. These are the days to lean into God's love for you, loving you through and through and through, mistakes and all. this love that comes from God is beyond circumstances. It's beyond understanding. It's beyond even death, because this love is God. It's the source of your life and the life of every student you teach. And it's our origin, and it's the ground we'll all return to. And this is where our true hope lies. And I would hope that you might be able to teach grounded in this love and this presence.
Kristen, that
Wow. You know what just happened, Rob, is everyone just clicked off our podcast and went over to turning to the mystics. That is,
Kristen,
that is beautiful.
as a former teacher, Kent and I both began as teachers. That was beautiful, and
Yeah.
thank you for the time you put into that. That was really well said, and
really well done. I was a theology teacher for a number of years and loved it. I do think one of the issues over the years became, as particularly in Catholic schools, there became so much emphasis on catechetical, catechism rules, these types of things, and I'm not dismissive of that, but that's not why Jesus came to be with us. And your beautiful words just really resonate. So thank you for that. Kirsten, in addition to teachers, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast that are school leaders, right? Too. I mean, teachers are also leaders, but I mean, like more on the administrative level. One of I was going to ask you one of your favorite mystics, but I think probably my favorite mystic is Saint Teresa of Avila. Okay, and I'm reading Maribel Starr's edition. Now it resonates a little more with me than the previous one. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is, it seems to me that she over and over says the gift of contemplation, the gift of prayer, is humility and self-knowledge. And I've been struck over the years. I just was listening to your Gabriel Marcel is the one you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And you were doing a reading from that, and he also pointed to humility. And it seems like over the mystics, that would often pop up, like humility, self-knowledge. And yet a leader is also called to be bold, and to kind of get out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, would you have any advice? How does a leader, through contemplation or however it might be, embrace that life of humility and self-knowledge while still having the courage to participate in holy boldness? What would you say to those leaders?
Yes. Yeah. Well, one is, I think humility in the mystical path is really the humility to realize how hard it is for us to accept how much God loves us, and to be humble about that. That's where humility, I think, comes from. How much we try to take charge, how much we judge ourselves, how much we, kind of disconnect ourselves from this loving presence. And I think that's where humility arises from. And I think for leaders, so my approach to leadership coaching is, one is to have our hope and our humility and grounded in this love. I think that's the starting point. But then there's also the work to be done around, psychological stability, somatic stability. And so bringing in these tools that help develop us. So I use the Enneagram to help people, in the psychological realm. I'm trained in somatics and somatic experiencing. I think understanding the nervous system and how it gets triggered and reactive, and having tools to be able to manage that. Leadership's challenging. People project things onto you. It's hard to stay out of reactivity. So I think self-knowledge and understanding your personality, your nervous system is really, really important. Always grounded, though, in the love that doesn't matter how much you perfect your ego or your nervous system, that you're loved through and through and through, just as you are. So trying to really hold the foundation of the hope that even death is trustworthy, that God is beyond our educational outcomes, but then working hard on the things that make us a good leader as well. The psychological, the somatic, and then just great leadership tools. I think there's I also try and bring forward wisdom from the Christian mystics, like you're sharing about Teresa of Avila. What does she teach us about being a great leader? And she was bold. She was
She was
very
bold.
bold.
She didn't mess
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
We're going to take a short pause and hear a word from our sponsor.
Catholic Virtual is a proud sponsor of the Next Class 2.0 and dedicated to supporting Catholic school leaders. Our partner schools turn to us for online teaching solutions that fill teacher openings, expand their catalogs to offer more course choice, and provide options for students an alternative learning experience. Learn more about how we can support you at CatholicVirtual.com.
Kristen, just continuing on that leadership coaching, if our listeners were interested, how would they contact you? Because a number of our school leaders have coaches or have the opportunity to get coaches. How would they reach out to you to learn more about your leadership coaching?
Yes, I can give you my website for the show notes, but it's KirstenOates.com. And that gives an overview of my approach to leadership coaching. Yeah.
Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes for sure, but KirstenOates.com for those listening that want to learn more about Kirsten's practice.
Related to that, so executive coaching for school leaders is becoming very, very popular, and particularly in the private school area, and not as much in the Catholic school realm, but is becoming more popular, which I think is really good, super helpful. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength to say, hey, I need some help and help guide me. But I think one of the concerns would be, well, we're doing, each school is called to be a slice of the kingdom of God on earth, whatever that ends up looking like. Those bricks aren't just bricks, um, and so it would seem like for, again, Catholic school leaders, there'd be something missing if we didn't bring in the thought that you shared. Like, well, just remember though how much God loves you. I mean, that's the starting point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it seems to me like you've hit the sweet spot, I guess is what I'm saying, because you're bringing in both of those together.
I think I've hit a sweet spot for a certain kind of leader,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I really
Yeah.
hope I have my current clients. It's kind of niche because it's people who really want their spirituality to be integrated into their leadership, to be a resource for their leadership, and so that's in executive leadership. That's going to be very niche. But yes, I think for people who really want that integration piece. And I think that's what we're called to do in our faith, is to really be grounded in well in the in what is actually reality. So in God we live and move and have our being. How can I experience that? God's love abides in me and I abide in God's love. Like, how can I experience that in my daily life and live from that grounded place? So it's really an invitation to experience reality as it actually is, and to open our eyes to that and operate. I think that's how you become wise too, is to operate from that truth about reality.
That struck me. Wisdom. There's so much wisdom in that. Yes, absolutely.
And Kirsten, we've talked about James Finley and how he found his mystical voice through Thomas Merton and being a trauma therapist. You've talked a little bit about, but could you comment a little more on how you found your mystical voice? And as we've also said, Kent and I have seen it grow over the past few years. From, I mean, you're a partner with James now, as opposed to sort of, the audience. I think you're contributing a lot. And how have you found your mystical voice?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. I, of course, James Finley's been an amazing mentor to me. Also, Richard Roy, I got to work very closely with him for a number of years on that strategy development, and being around these mystical people, something's caught as well as taught by them, and so being in their presence, I think even like in the podcast, you catch some of that from Jim. So that's been a tremendous gift. But I think what gives me confidence is, about 8 years ago, I was on an international flight flying to visit my sister, brother-in-law, and their children, and about halfway through the flight, we entered a really terrible storm, and one of the engines went out, and the plane started having massive engine trouble. So all the communications went out, the lights went out, the plane was shaking. The everything's crashing in the background. No one can communicate with us. And I really thought I was going to die. So I had a near-death experience, and I think it just invited me. It enfolded and allowed me to. I was gifted these different states of consciousness. So one was I could feel myself passing out, like from the fear. And then I had this thought of, well, you can't pass out; you'll miss your death. And so like
That's
this
great.
consciousness arose that was able to be present to my death.
Yeah.
So that consciousness arose,
Mm.
and then immediately I started going into this beautiful contemplative practice that James Finley taught me, which is the I love you practice, where you breathe in the love of God, loving me through and through and through as I'm dying, and you breathe out that love back into God with all the fear of dying. And so I kind of
Mhm.
was rocking myself back and forward. I love you. I love you. It's okay. I love you. And in the midst of that practice, I went into this conscious state where I just felt the full presence of God. And what I could feel in the presence of God was life and death, but I couldn't tell which was which, and I knew it didn't matter. And before I exited that place, I was curious about where I'd land in life or death, but I knew it didn't matter. And so when I came back to consciousness, I was so overwhelmed by the kind of uh, shock in my body. That experience left me for a while, and then when I landed in the Philippines, where my sister lives, uh, I was going there because my sister's child was in the NICU. Her fourth child was born preemie. And so I landed. I didn't even get a shower, but I was put in charge of the other three kids. And I took the little girl, Lulu, to gym practice. And at the very end of the gym practice, the teacher was blowing bubbles, and she brought over to Lulu and me where we were sitting. She blew this big, enormous bubble, just like with this thin film uh, around it. And when Lulu put her finger to pop it, this this bubble was very like the sense of it was very much like the experience I had in God, this like infinite, but
Yeah.
you know, and she popped the bubble and the experience came back to me. And I've
Mm,
had the confidence of that experience ever since. And
mm,
so I think it's taken years to integrate it,
mm,
but it gives me confidence in what the mystics say, and
mhm,
and and I'm still finding my own way to say it, but
mhm,
I know that reality in my being, and
mhm.
I love to share that with others.
It's a wonderful story. You and James Henley do talk a lot about trauma,
Hmm.
but I think, well, not but and in such a way that it's positive and life-giving. What
Hmm.
it's generally not an experience that, I guess when an engine goes out on a plane, we wouldn't say that's awesome. But at the same time, there's something from that. And we're both, Rob and I are both more from the Ignatian tradition. We're trying to expand our horizons though. But Ignatius has that contemplation on deathbed. And there's other mystics do as well. In our leadership series that we do, we incorporate something from David Brooks, the resume life
Hmm.
versus the eulogy life, which is a
Hmm.
wonderful way to think about life in terms of a eulogy. It seems to me that that story that you just told, Kirsten, relates to a lot of the discussions that you have, and again, that's helpful for Catholic school leaders, teachers, whatever you is. These trauma moments, is the word opportunity, or is that maybe not the right word? What are trauma moments uh, for people in these situations?
Yeah. Yeah. So starting point, everything unfolds in God. So
Hmm.
we're never abandoned, even in our trauma
Hmm.
experiences. And I think for some people, trauma is so overwhelming, and you might never recover the sense of God's presence, in the midst of the trauma, or even later as you process it. Um, but but God is always present in it. And I think for some of us, we recover that experience, and then it's experiential salvation. It's the experience of being saved in the midst of feeling like you're
Hmm.
dying. And
Hmm.
so So I think for many trauma people, there's an opportunity both psychologically to heal a trauma and become an expanded person based on the trauma. Like the trauma, it contracts you for a while, but it has the opportunity to expand you beyond even what you might have been. But then it also, for many, there seems to be, and Julian of Norwich is another one who had a near-death experience, that, if you are invited by God, you can find God's presence saving you in the midst of your dying the trauma death, which is a death to the ego of a certain kind.
Very good. Thank you.
Kristen, we are so appreciative of your time and joining us. And Kent, any final thoughts before I close it out here?
No, just gratitude, thank you so much for all the work that you do, Kirsten. It's really blessed, grace-filled work, and it just was wonderful meeting with you and talking with you today. I'm glad I dressed up. I mean, I feel really good about that right now. Rob, I'm not judging you in any way, by the way.
I got a sweater on. So, Kirsten, we, for 5 seasons now, finish every podcast with the same question to all of our guests, and that is, who's your greatest teacher and why?
Oh, well, I would say my greatest teacher is God as my life, for sure. And it's wonderful to be able to continue to look back on your life and uncover all the ways God's been leading and teaching you. It's wonderful how retrospectively you can still be taught by God. But then I think here James Finley for sure. And one thing I didn't get to mention is I'm in the process of writing a book with Jim Finley on discernment and the Enneagram. And so that's been another way I've been learning a great deal of how to articulate these challenging things. One last thing I just want to say, when I had the opportunity to share my thoughts with the teachers, I just want to say what a gift that was. And it really brought tears to my eyes to have the opportunity to tell teachers that they're loved. I so admire what they do, and I think their work's really hard. So thank you for that opportunity. I appreciate it.
No, my wife is a teacher, and my oldest daughter is a teacher, and my middle daughter is going to Spain to teach this fall. So it's the family business.
Wow.
And they're angels. I mean, the work they do, especially with the little ones. My wife and oldest daughter teach 5-year-olds, and they're doing God's work. Kirsten, what a blessing to have you on the next class. We're grateful for your time and for you to say yes to the invitation. So to our listeners, we hope you are getting ready. This is approaching Holy Week. So we wish all of you a blessed Easter season. And thank you again, Kirsten.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in.